Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Life After DD214. And welcome back to the ending and the conclusion of Jeff's story. Last week, we talked about his military career right before retirement. He also had a taste of the civilian life when he was living in DC. And now we finish up his second part of his career. And we get into what he's up to now living as a retiree.
Yeah. And some of the equipment I found was broken beyond use,
Unserviceable, for sure.
and I was just amazed.
Mhm.
But either way, I had them ready for NTC. By going through all that, got all the equipment up and running. So NTC was a breeze.
Yeah. Well, compared to the rest of the previous Talk X's.
Yeah, because we got there and they're just looking at me when we. It was funny because we hit the first site and I was like, "Sorry, Major Colonel, where do you plan on putting the talk?" And they're like, "Right there." And I was like, "All right." And I just drag all the vehicles over there. I was like, "You do this, you do that, you do this," and it just talks up in like 30 minutes.
Right.
Start.
Where previously it probably would have taken the whole day.
Yeah, and got the S6, working out of a truck so they can communicate and everything like that. Just directing traffic and making things happen.
Yeah.
But I ended up pissing off the ops captain because
they're not that great anyway.
Well, he thought my job was to sit in the talk and do nothing.
Okay.
Not go out and make sure force protection is being taken care of. Besides the roving patrols of the perimeter, the security at the front gate, just all the little nitpicky stuff that you're supposed to do besides run the talk.
Right.
Because that's why you're the alternate NCO for the talk. You run this while I'm gone, take care of business, and I'm going to go out and do this, and I'll come back. If you need me, send the driver out, find me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that didn't roll. Fast forward to our 9-month deployment into South Korea, which ran great because when we got there, they gave me 20-foot expando trailers.
Oh, cool.
So I ran the talk out of those. You put that up in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, no kidding.
Power everything, because everything's inside. You just disconnect it, slide it over, and fasten it all down.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
He told me at the end of our thing that he was sorry for all the crap that he gave me while we were there because he wouldn't listen to me what the colonel wanted. And I kept telling him from the time I met him till that discussion, she's not happy with you. This is what she's looking for. But it took him almost a year before he realized it.
Some people are just slow learners.
So at the end, when we were getting done with that, is when I put in for my retirement and all that.
Okay.
So I started doing some of the classes there in South Korea.
Oh, interesting.
Because I just went through, because you had to check off some of the stuff, and they said because we were forward deployed to South Korea, they would take our checklist for all the classes and move it forward to Fort Stewart. So this way we didn't have to redo it.
Okay.
But I found out when we got back to Fort Stewart, they had a ton of stuff that was localized for everybody getting out in the States, besides just the local area. For the whole United States, they had to where you can go, because your command had to basically put you on TDY so you can go to these classes, and I did the troops transportation, but they had carpenter classes and a few other different things like that were there in the local area that businesses like pulled together and like sponsored for the military to go through. And
is this kind of like your skill bridge, like a
kind of, yeah.
Prior
they were like
to the skill bridge becoming a thing, they were trying to test it out at some point.
Yeah, because some of the classes were new, and some of the classes have been around for a while, like the troops transportation.
Right.
And I got to do half of it at Fort Stewart, and I had to do they didn't have a road portion, so I had to go 2 weeks over here to Fort Benning.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to pay me to drive and back, drive over to Fort Benning, and do all the stuff here at Fort Benning to take the driver's test and everything like that. That was here on Fort Benning. The Fort Benning Troops Transportation put you up in a hotel and everything like that, so that was already taken care of, and it was great because their learning um, criteria, they based it off your skills. So
Okay.
if you were doing bad in one event, they made you do it over and over and over again. And the great thing is the truck that you would drive while you're there at their little pads and on the road and everything like that was the truck you were going to drive at the test, because they drove it over to the testing environment for you for the state.
Oh, that makes it a whole lot easier.
Yeah, because you're used to the vehicle by then.
Yeah, exactly. You pretty much named it yourself.
Yeah,
it's practically your truck.
and I see them all the time because since I live right next to Fort Benning, I see the vans going up and down the road. I see vans because they're dry box vans.
Okay.
Going up and down the road. So I give them wide berth because I know some of them can't drive, and some of
It's
them can.
different.
But I mean, I
Listen,
let them do their thing because I went through that at one point in time.
yeah, you were just saying like if there's a portion of it that you're not so good at, you're gonna do
Yeah,
it over again. If you're just some random person on the road, you don't know who's behind that
yeah.
wheel. They could have they could have been a recycle 4 times over trying to get this one thing right.
And that was the thing. If you were local here at Fort Benning, you could get recycled through because they weren't paying TDY. They were just, oh, we know where you're at, kind
Yeah,
of thing. But since I was exterior, they kind of focused more on the people that were exterior a little bit.
that makes
And
sense.
me and a couple of the guys that were exterior, we picked it up pretty well. I'm not saying on the best. I was nervous as hell taking the road test because they I don't know. It's one of those things. You're like, I've never done this on a civilian vehicle before, even though I rehearsed it with these guys and they say I'm good. Am I actually good? Because now I'm taking it in front of a guy that's testing me. So that whole nervous Nancy thing kicks in and your nerves are shattered. So I was babying that thing through like I was an 18-year-old kid taking my driver's test for the first time in mom's car. I mean, I
Hmm.
was nervous, trying to remember. Okay, I gotta slow down. This train's come. The train tracks are coming. I gotta stop and roll the window down.
All the
Everything going through your
things.
head.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the little things. But that helped out a lot because I did that, and I had like 4 months before I actually started my transition.
Hmm.
And I was able to. They help you out apply for jobs through Snyder, jobs through TMC, which is flatbedding, jobs through all sorts of different other companies, even local people that were around that base. They're like, we got these people, saying advertisement for jobs, but you can go nationwide if you wanted to. If you're leaving Fort Stewart and going to California, they're like, oh, we can help you find jobs over there. So they really pushed out your resume to all these different places. And
And this is with the troops to transport, or is this
yeah,
with?
yeah, with the
Okay,
troops
gotcha.
transport
Okay,
outside of
outside of Army
yeah,
SFL TAP.
yeah. So
Okay,
once you got in the
got it.
program, they really wanted to help you find a job because for them to place you means now you're part of their statistics.
Right.
So it looks good for them if they can place you. So they're amped in order to get that going. So I mean, gotta make it look good for themselves, but at the same time, they're helping you out. So it's like they're both parties are taking advantage of each other.
Yeah.
No one else is going to be looking out for you. The only other person that's going to help you out is if you are married, your significant other and your family. But you have to learn your limits. How far can you reach out before it looks needy, kind of thing. To stand on your own and do all that. I mean, it's scary because I mean, you're institutionalized. After a certain period of time, you're so used to the grind that you don't know how to give it up.
I love that comment because I hear that a lot, especially when you're first getting out, right? And you've known this for a while.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
so institutionalized. You're not sure um, how to change, how to get rid of it. And for the most part, what you know to be right is what you're planning on doing for the rest of your life. But then you realize, like, oh, that's weird to other people.
Yes.
right? What we did in the Army is considered weird when we show up 15 minutes early to a meeting
Yes.
or anything else.
Or or being voluntold to do something.
Right, right, and
I mean, I mean, for my boss to look at me and going, "Are you okay with doing this?" I'm like, "You just told me I have to do it." Well,
yeah,
that's not what I meant. Oh, that's how I took it. I got to do
yeah,
this, so that means I'm going to do it.
yes, right, and had we, and I learned this the hard way too. When I was in a leadership position outside of the Army, one of the first things that I was trying to get people to do was like, "Hey, I need you to hit this, do this before you leave," and they're like, "That's not in my job description,"
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I'm not going to do that, and I'm like, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
You're not. He's not used to it. You're like, wait a minute. He told me no. Can he tell
yeah,
me
I'm
no?
like, yeah, exactly. And so I really had to go to my boss at that point, and I'm like, I was middle management. I had to go to my manager, and be like, hey, he said no. Like, is that? Am I? Who's wrong here? Like, am I wrong
Yeah.
or is he wrong? And the funny thing is I was wrong. I'm like, okay, all right, just gonna have to figure out this
Can you
whole.
explain how I'm wrong?
Yeah, well, yeah, I had to do a whole lot of new leadership experience,
Oh,
and hence why I'm no longer in a leadership position because it did not take.
so because of where I'm working now, because I'm IT for Goodwill of the Southern Rivers, and I'm a what they call a tier two person. So
Yep.
I go on the road to the stores, besides do all the local stuff, in the office, riding the keyboard and doing remote stuff. Our our manager for the tier two um, had a heart issue, ended up getting put in the hospital for like 6 months. So for a while there, our director was trying out, hey, you're gonna be like part manager and you're gonna be part manager. So they kind of like, but we're not gonna get paid for it, just to help, ease the burden of her because now she's got to take on being a manager besides being a director. So we tried that out, and I ended up finding out that feelings is a big thing.
Yes,
Oh my god.
feelings are a thing.
I was just looking at him going like, what's wrong with you? You got a problem. Deal with the problem. Your feelings don't matter. I don't give a shit. Your dog's sick.
Yeah,
Just fix the problem. Well, I got to go home. They're throwing up everywhere. You should have took his ass to the vet this morning and dropped him off. I don't care. But no, you got to let him go home and take care of the sick dog. You're just like, what are we doing here?
yeah.
And that's when I looked at her and I was like, I'm not applying for your manager position.
It's
I'm going
like
to
keep
stay.
it to him.
Yeah. And that's what happened. He grew up in the civilian world. He can talk all that touchy feely stuff and convey how things are supposed to be in such a manner that I look at him going, I want to be like you, but at the same time I can't
Yeah,
because it doesn't. I can't get that out of me because you have a job to do. You either do it or you get out the way.
yeah, understood.
Yes, I retired in 2019. Almost 6 years later, I can't stand stupid, and my boss knows it because she'll say something stupid in a meeting, and I did it this week. I looked at her and I was like, "What's the benefit of that?" I was like, "You're doing this. What's the benefit of doing this versus leaving them where they're at?" I was like, "Because it make no sense." And well, that's how I want it. And I was like, I don't. You asked my opinion. That's what I'm gonna get. So
There
I
you
think
go.
it's stupid. And she abruptly had to leave. And the person that she was conveying all this to, I was like, so whatever it is that y'all gonna talk about later, I was like, I don't want any part of it.
There you go. So let's jump back though. Let's do that part that we missed.
So I so I did place with Snyder,
Okay.
out of Troop Transportation.
Which to me is hilarious because you reclassed as an 88 Mike to do transportation. The last back half of your career, you did zero transportation. As soon as you received your new MOS, you never worked the job. Now that you're getting out, you're doing transportation.
But at the same time, I didn't know how. I was looking for computer jobs, but I didn't know where to start. Like I was like,
Okay.
I have knowledge, but most of it is military, and I know their equipment is old.
Yes.
And all this civilian stuff is going to be newer. It's going to be things that I'm not friendly with. And I was scared because I wasn't sure I was going to be up to the task to jump in and just go full board at it like I should. And understanding that I would have to learn the system that they use in place. I knew I would have to learn it, but at the same time, I was scared
Mm-hmm.
that I wouldn't be up to par with what I could put on paper.
That's an interesting dynamic. I see where you're coming from. I didn't recognize for myself even like I had a lot of fear when I was getting out to finding that new job. Yeah, that's interesting that you were afraid that you weren't going to be
Enough.
enough.
Yeah.
Like the bar for you seemed like it was here and you were down here, but they could build you up to this.
Yeah. I thought I was further down than I
Yeah,
actually
fair. That's
was.
fair. That's fair.
And my wife um, was working for Goodwill at the time. So she started when we were in Germany the last time. The kids were all in school. She started working at the local thrift shop,
Okay.
volunteering all it. So she learned to love it. So when we went to Fort Stewart and the kids are in school, she's like, I need something to do. So she went down to Goodwill, applied, and became team lead there at the store over Hinesville in Fort Stewart.
Right.
So when we were about to transfer over here because you know, we already settled on our property and we're getting everything ready for us to actually have a house and all that stuff and move into. Um, she applied ahead of time to the Goodwill over here. She's like, I can just transfer, apply for a job over here. Skills are the same, so just transfer over here. She got hired ahead of time before we actually got here. She drove 4 hours across state, did the interview, and didn't realize that they wanted to have her start like that Monday.
Oh no.
Yeah, and she's like, I live by Fort Stewart, and she goes, I'll be here in like a month, and they're like, we'll hold the position for you. That's
Okay.
how that's how short staffed they were. We'll hold the position for you. And yes, at the time, because I took 60 days of permissive TDY, the what you're allowed to have leaving. I was in Pennsylvania driving for Snyder, stuck in some gravel parking lot waiting for a load. And she's like, "Hey, Monday when we move to Fort to our house, they want me at work, so we're
I
gonna move
I
on
have to be at
Saturday."
work. You're gonna do all this stuff, and I'm gonna
Yeah,
be at work.
yeah. She's gonna bring the family over on Saturday, get them all set up.
Mm-hmm.
I need you here,
Yeah.
and this is Thursday.
Okay. And you're
So
in
I
Pennsylvania.
and I'm in Pennsylvania. So I called my dispatcher and I was like, "You either get me a load to go to Atlanta, or I'm driving this truck to Atlanta with nothing. Either way, this
Right.
truck's going to Atlanta." Because I was set. I was going home. That was the first time I was ever forceful to a civilian person because I was timid while I was driving for them. Yeah, they would fuss at me for going over the speed, going downhill, and things like that because they were governed at 63 miles an hour. And I'd take their little lashings and all that stuff. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And all this stuff. Whatever. Because I was still timid and scared. Little did I know that I had any power whatsoever. Literally, the next morning, I get loads to take me to Atlanta. I get to Atlanta on Friday, throw the keys at the mechanics, tell them where the truck's parked. Amy's waiting in the other parking lot for me. We jump in and we go to Fort Stewart, gather up the family and drive over here. Sure enough, Monday morning she's at work. A week later, the kids have
It's cool.
starting school and everything like that. So I'm doing now the stay at home mom stuff and taking the kids to school and registering them and trying to see, okay, the bus comes here, but we don't live there yet, so I got to drive to school and pick you up. So doing all that, and about, I don't know, a month, maybe less of being there, the director lady I said that I kind of fussed at was over doing something in Amy's store one night. And they started talking, and she told him all the stuff that I did at the Pentagon. And she's like, "Tell him to give me his resume." I don't have anything IT related on the resume. Okay, so I hurried up and threw something together and emailed it off to her. And they're like, they had me show up.
Mm-hmm.
So this is September timeframe of that year, of 2019.
Okay.
On my birthday, I get a job interview,
Hey, happy birthday.
and during the classes, the interview process, they're like, you need to dress at a level above the position you're going for.
Right.
So I show up in a two-piece suit, jacket, tie, whole 9 yards. I'm looking at everyone in t-shirts and blue jeans. I was like, oh shit, I'm way overdressed.
Listen, I understand completely. I showed up in coat and tie to a job interview at a bookstore just to be a person to put books on the shelf. I showed up with coat and tie because that's the interview uniform. The last interview that I did for the role that I'm in now was the one time that I don't think I wore a coat. When I went to IT, I stopped wearing the tie. So I would put on a nice shirt, put a coat over it, and that would be the thing. And also, I was always in slacks. We also had in-person interviews until recently, until about 5 years ago, right?
Man,
So
COVID, thank you.
yeah, and so um, I will say this. I will absolutely admit, I did an interview on Zoom with a coat and a shirt and just shorts.
That's all they're seeing is this.
Yeah, because they only see this. Like that was it. And then and that was my previous job, and then the one that I just landed now that I'm working at now. Um, I showed up in basically what you're wearing right now to a job interview, and I was not underdressed at all. I was actually the overdressed person because the hiring people were wearing what I'm wearing right now, and I was wearing what you're wearing.
And the only reason why I'm wearing a button-up top, button-up shirt today, is because we had guests coming in from another Goodwill about our POS system that we're installing currently. So they wanted us to look nice for them, and I was like, okay, I'll wear a button-up shirt. Otherwise, I'd be wearing a t-shirt.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just the life of an IT person. Outlandish to us is the two-piece suit, right? Is the coat and tie.
This is this is uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, that's fair. So you've been doing that for how long now?
So they hired me initially as a contractor
Okay.
because they're doing a massive expansion and remodeling. So they needed extra hands in order to retrofit their current employees. So they hired me and another guy who is now the manager over me
Oh, got it.
as a temporary contractor. And we were doing all the grunt work, doing things. Fast forward to after the lockdown, when the people could start shopping and everything like that. Two of the guys that were working there got other jobs to other places. And so they immediately called me and they were like, hey, we want you to apply for this job. And I was like, okay. And we want you to show up a week early as a contractor because he's leaving the Friday before you're supposed to start. I was like, okay, so I already got the job then.
Yeah,
I'm applying.
essentially.
It's a formality.
Yeah.
So I applied for the job, showed up, sat down, went through all the process that he was doing, everything that he did so I could take it over. And then, yeah, that was that 2021, 2020? I don't remember which. It's all a blur.
Yeah.
And because they liked me so much because I was the only contractor when they did hire me as a contractor that they would send out to the stores to do things, retrofit their comm closets so this way they didn't look like a giant rat's nest. Is the server farms and things like that. Reinstall switches, program the switches. I mean, I was doing all that as a contractor for them when we were doing the upgrades of and the remodeling at their headquarters because they were moving all sorts of the offices around and they were demolishing walls and putting up new ones, and so they were relocating all these comm closets too in the same time. And so with all that, I mean, we got switch stacks. I think the biggest switch stack we got is a 6 switch, and that was fun because the cable guys mislabeled the runs. So I had everything programmed for the right ports per their layout, how they had it in the building, and they mislabeled the runs. So I had to go through
Whoopsies.
after they connected everything up and we connected everything up and reprogram the switches again. It cost me like 2 days worth of extra work.
Oh, that's funny.
Because the hardest part was figuring out where the runs went to. I was like, this is supposed to go in this room, not this room.
Yeah. Things aren't working the way it's supposed to. What's happened?
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of things that I want to talk about. The first one is this. On this show, we talk about how building your network is part of the things that's going to make you successful with your transition out of the military. And
Yes.
what I need people to understand in this case is your network is literally everybody that you know.
And everybody you come in contact with.
And everybody you come in contact with, exactly. But not
whether
just
it be a 5-second contact or like the 30, like they talk about the 30-second speech you give someone in an elevator.
Right. Absolutely.
Little things like that. Your public personality is a lot different than your private personality.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you can't be this blunt object. Everything's a nail, so I must be a hammer kind of thing. So yeah, I know I've cussed a little bit while I'm doing it. So my language changes when I go. Man. Yeah, but my language changes when I go to work. When I'm around certain people, it took a while in order to get to the point where, because at first I wasn't cautious that I wasn't cognizant of that I was saying anything wrong, because while I was a contractor, a couple months out of retirement, I'm cussing like a sailor around everyone as far as they're concerned. For us, it's normal language.
Right.
And my boss would have to look at me going, "You can't talk like this." And I was like, "What did I say?" I literally had to have her tell me what I said because I didn't know what I said.
Right. Because to your credit, you're just having a normal conversation.
Yeah.
To everybody else's ears, you've dropped the F-bomb 4 times. You said a couple other words, a couple of other colorful words, but you don't realize it.
Yeah.
Because that's how we talk to each other.
Yeah, and I told her, I was like, "I'm sorry," because it didn't help also in that little IT office. The guy that was in charge of it was a retired Navy guy.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other senior techs was an Air Force guy. One of the other guys was a corpsman in the Marine Corps. So
yeah, so you're just surrounded by veterans who.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm just talking to normal people.
Yeah, exactly.
So you leave the office because there was 3 people that were straight civilians in there. So they would have to remind me every night. It didn't bother them because they were used to it. The other guys,
because they're surrounded and outnumbered.
Yeah. And it didn't help. Like, I guess it didn't help also because being around the light infantry guys, you get really close to other guys, and you don't realize that you're encroaching on other people's personal space, because I'm still not used to that.
Right.
So me getting close to somebody and using their keyboard over their shoulders, they thought that was weird, and I was like, "This is normal. Let me show you." And just like take over, and they're like hunched down over their keyboard, going, "Can you get off my back?" No.
Yeah,
because you're doing it wrong.
I'm pretty sure you've done that to me when we were in the talk.
Like, probably.
I'm pretty sure.
Because it was normal behavior.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And I was going to say, like, I'm pretty sure I did the same to you.
Probably,
right?
Yeah.
Like, listen, I need this. Like this. do this.
And you just kind of you just move over a little bit, and you don't care if they're almost sitting in your lap, you know?
Yeah. But the thing that I was mentioning specifically about your network and how you got the job at Goodwill is your network was very personal.
Yeah, it was my wife.
Your network was your wife. Your wife knew somebody
Mm-hmm.
and they got to talking, and then your name just happened to come up. And so I feel like it's definitely something that needs to be said that just because we say build a network when we're transitioning out of the army or out of the military doesn't mean that it has to be a strictly professional, strictly business network. Opportunities happen at any time. The thing that rhymes about this is that Amy has been there to save your bacon more times than you can count.
Yeah, I owe her everything.
We are absolutely appreciative of.
Yes.
And the next thing I wanted to talk about was your house, because before you left Fort Drum, before you went to Germany, you and I had a conversation, and I didn't really understand it at that time. But you were purchasing land where you are now.
Yeah, we were searching for property to plan for our retirement because Amy put her foot down. She
Saving
wanted,
your bacon.
yeah, she wanted certain things, and she wanted to have at least 5 acres or more out in the country. She didn't want to be in the city. She's not a city girl. And I was like, that's fine. I'm a recluse. I love the country. So when we took 2 weeks before we left Fort Drum, and we came down here to the Alabama side of Fort Benning.
Okay.
And she's got family down here, so we stayed with him. He was very 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 accommodating. Um, her stepfathers, I consider him. She considered him a father, and I consider him a father. He's a retired infantry guy, so it was even better because we could talk for hours and no clean words would come through at all.
That's fair.
Because he retired 3 years before I joined, so he's
Okay.
old school Army.
Yeah.
But he gave us he gave us some pointers, where to look, where not to look, and we must have surveyed, I don't know, 10, 15 different properties, and finally found the one that we bought. And the only thing that was on it was a wellhead. There was a dilapidated, single wide on it, but it fell in on itself. It was non livable, non repairable. So we were like, that's fine. We're just gonna get it hauled away. We didn't care.
Right. You
So
didn't want to live in it.
no, no. Amy's other thing was no trailers.
Well, there you
No
go.
trailers.
It's part of the requirements.
Yeah. And we ended up talking to the guy. I think he lived up near Fort Knox, but he owned the property down here, and we ended up getting it for 50 grand. And yeah, we paid on it for like 7 years, 8 years. By the time we got the house built, we had it paid off. We got the loan through. Well, she like I said, she found all this. She found a credit union that does farmer loans for vacant property because she couldn't find anybody that go the normal routes through the regular banks to buy vacant property that didn't have a livable home on it. So she found this farmer's credit union, and we didn't know anything about the VA, not the VA loan itself for mortgage, but the other stuff.
The construction loan.
Construction loan, yeah, because we were doing it so far in advance. We weren't wanting a house built yet because we were doing it 6, 8 years beforehand. It was just going to sit there
Right.
while waiting for us to show up. But we ended up, because of the Farmers Credit Union, when we got the loan through them, we became stakeholders. So we got dividends off of the amount of money that we took out on the loan,
Oh, that's
and we're
interesting.
paying back.
That's interesting.
And so every year we would basically get a dividends check for the same amount our mortgage was for the land. So we would
Okay.
just roll it over as a 13th payment for the land. We didn't,
Perfect.
yeah, it worked out great. It was kind of sad when we transitioned over to the house because we had the land pulled out underneath it since the house is sitting on it to
Hmm.
get rid of the credit union because we actually made friends with the people that we would have to talk to on the phone there,
Gotcha.
and also the dividend check didn't hurt.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But then you get the house built, and
Yeah,
both of y'all starting jobs and getting the kids in school right away. By the time you
yeah.
get them,
We didn't get to move into the house right away because they were because this the we picked such a remote position that it was hard to find a builder to come out here, and they were delayed in getting it finished for us. So we actually, when we were at Fort Stewart, bought a fifth wheel RV
hmm.
and was living on the campgrounds at Fort Benning
Okay.
for 2 months.
Okay.
And then we decided, well, why are we paying for this and got a house that's got a good septic system and everything there, and we can just live next to it.
That's a good point.
So we just moved the RV next to the house, hooked it into the septic system and the water and electrical,
Yeah,
and lived next to the house. We
that
came
totally
inside
fits.
and yeah, we just come inside and walk to our shower, and we're like, we use one shower. We made an agreement with the builders. We'll use this one shower. We'll clean up after ourselves, and we won't interfere with anything that's going on.
There you
And
go.
so the only time we came in here is to use the shower and that one toilet, and that was it. Otherwise, you stayed outside.
Yeah, perfect.
So yeah, we lived next to the house for another 2 months, I think, before we finally actually got to bring stuff into it.
Yeah. Do you still have the RV?
No, I sold it to one of my neighbors.
Oh, okay. I was
Yeah,
gonna say, like, because just in case, I think that one of the cool things about that is if you have an RV that you can leave on your property that can get tied into everything, right? That all of a sudden becomes a mother-in-law suite, right? That becomes a place where someone's coming to visit. They don't have to like stay in the house, sleep on the floor,
yeah, they get
or
their own personal spot.
they get their own personal spot. It's got electricity, probably a water hookup that you are nice enough to give them.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, and then also like it gives you that opportunity to go on a trip. I will say that um, RV campsites are a lot cheaper than hotel rooms.
Yes, that's one of the other reasons why we didn't want to do the hotels
Right.
because you're spending all that money and you didn't get anything back from it.
Hmm.
With buying the RV and paying for we had to pay. I think it was cheap. It was like $15 a day, $10 a day to stay out there at the Fort Benning RV site.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I got an RV that I can do whatever I want with once I'm done with it.
Yeah.
I can
Absolutely.
sell it, trade it, whatever. I mean, so I do get some money back from this little transition from military life to here's now my home for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad that you found that retirement home that you guys are going to spend the rest of your time in.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly everything we wanted, but we got close enough to what we wanted.
Perfect.
And yeah, I'm like, I've been doing little projects, building a pole barn, pump house, chicken coops, extended the deck and everything like that. So she keeps me busy.
That's true. I mean, we got to keep you busy, otherwise you're going to go crazy.
That's why she told me. She told me I had to find a job. She did. She goes, you can't sit at the house anymore.
Oh,
And it just lucked up that literally like a couple days later is when she met Cheryl and everything went off from there.
well, you mentioned this earlier. You talked about your back blew out.
Yes.
So, did you go to the VA? Did you get disability? What did you do during your transition for
So
retirement?
I didn't know I could go to them for anything. I just knew what they told me as far as filing my paperwork. And
Okay.
once I got that percentage, I didn't know because I was more concentrating on the whole TRICARE for license I retired out. I would go to them for that.
Okay.
And when COVID kicked in, um, yeah, they had to nix me as a contractor because I was not an employee, and everything got locked down and all that stuff. So I
Hmm.
took it as a chance to maybe let's work on my back because I actually had a situation where I went to get up out of this same chair and I just fell on the ground. I,
Okay.
so went and saw the doc up at Fort Benning, and they're like, "You need an MRI. We need to see what's going on. X-rays tell us nothing." And I was like, "Yeah." So they sent me down and got an MRI and hooked me up with this back doctor specialist in Columbus.
Okay.
And the guy's like, "Oh, you got a blown out disc. We're just gonna do a discectomy and just pull it out because everything on my spine got pushed up in this small little crevice in the back. Everything else was disc just smashing in on all those nerves in my spinal cord." So I was like, "You don't want to fuse the two vertebrae together? You're just gonna pull out a chunk of the disc?" And he's like, "Yeah, we'll just pull out a chunk of the disc." Long story short, when he did that, he ended up taking out so much that the two vertebrae are touching now. There's barely any disc there, and for I don't know about 4 months, I could barely walk, even with like a witch, walking stick.
Hmm.
I felt like I was 60, 70 years old. I couldn't touch my feet, put socks on. It's helpless.
Yeah.
Um, the the senior doc took over and was like, "Yeah, now we need to fuse your two vertebrae together." And I was like, "No, you're not touching me." I was like, "I'm slowly regaining some of my flexibility so I can put on socks now." I was like, "So, no, I will work with what I got and what you gave me. And if it comes down to it, I may come back and see you." So I refused to go back to him because he was supposed to be like the best. He was supposed to be the best doctor. I didn't get him. I got his practice and one of his subordinate doctors.
Ah, gotcha.
The best thing was is shortly after the whole debacle with the subordinate doctor, he got hired on to a hospital, so he was no longer at the
Oh,
practice.
gotcha.
And I was like, great, he's
Understand.
gonna screw up more people.
Yeah, hopefully
But
not.
yeah, it took me about 6 months get to the point where I could put my own shoes on and everything like that. And that's about around the time that shortly after that is when they called me back and hired me full time.
Okay.
Shortly after all that was when I found out while I was getting seen for the operation and all that stuff, I was supposed to let VA know that I got operated on, and they were supposed to
Okay.
automatically up me to 100% up to the point of my follow up after the operation, and then I would get reevaluated for my percentage. I didn't know that, so now I'm past the recovery phase, and I sent them everything, and they're like, "Okay, now we'll send you in for a reeval." I was like, okay. So they hooked me up with a doc. And by now, I've already talked to all the vets from the time I was at Fort Stewart till now. And everybody that went through the VA and all their little interviews with their medical. And since I went through it once and I saw the little things that they do, like they'll drop a pen on the floor and our instinct is we're going to help you out. We're going to pick it up and hand it to you. Well, they're gauging everything on your flexibility.
Hmm.
So listening to all the vets, they're like, wear some slide-on shoes because you're going to bend over to take your shoes off. Wear a button-up shirt or some kind of shirt that you don't have to raise your arms above your head to take it off. It was little things like that. They're like, because everything's a range of motion with the VA.
Okay.
And one of the guys told me, and I'll never forget this. Um, he goes, "You have your good days and you have your bad days." He goes, "When you go for the VA appointment review, you have to remember how your body acts on your bad days." He
Yeah.
goes, "Only do your limitations that you have on your bad days." And I was like, that makes perfect sense. I was like, because when I did my first VA physical and got my 70%, I was having a really great day. I bent over, I grabbed that pen for that nice lady. I stretched as much as I possibly could for her because I was naive of their whole process. So, but when I went back for the second one, I was like, I got to remember what it was like when I couldn't put my shoes on. And that's probably the best advice that I could ever gotten from a vet that went through it, because that's all they don't care about pain. They don't care about like the tinnitus that you have in your ears. They don't care about your hearing loss. They just, oh, you got tinnitus, so you got ringing in your ears. They, there's no percentage for that. It's like they just draw a line across it. Yep, you got tinnitus. I still get it where my left foot will go completely numb. That means I've done too much and I'm about to have a very bad situation to where my whole leg's going to go numb and I'm not going to be able to do anything with it.
Right.
And
Right.
so
It's
I
just
still
gonna
have my
fall right
moments.
from underneath.
Yeah. So I still have my moments where I can't do certain things. So I have to watch myself and pay attention to what my body's telling me now.
Yeah. I
And
understand.
I look at things now going, how much does that weigh? Should I pick that up?
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding. Especially when your back explodes like yours did.
Yeah, that was completely unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of it really scared Amy the day I fell on my face right here, because she was standing over by the stairs, and I think she was gonna go out the front door, and I was like, okay, let me go with you, and I just on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a definitely an emotional event.
Yeah. And she's like, you all
Okay.
right? And I was like, let me just sit here for a moment and make sure I can feel everything.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously, you go through a whole checklist of okay, okay, I can feel my 10 fingers.
Yeah.
Okay, I can feel my 10 toes. Okay, I can rotate these. Oh, yeah, I can feel everything. Just give me a second, I'll get myself up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I literally like baby crawled over to the banister and like helped myself up to make sure I didn't tweak anything on the way standing up.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely keep an eye out on it. All right, Jeff, I got two more questions for you, and then we're going to wrap this up.
All right.
First question is knowing what you know now, after not only one, but two transitions, what's one thing that you learned during your transition that you want someone who's going to it now or about to start? What is one thing that you want them to know?
The biggest thing is you got to have a rainy day fund for at least, you want 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get 60 to 90 days to help you out at the beginning, is probably the best, because the beginning is, you're so used to that steady paycheck that you're used to getting it every 1st and 15th. The VA only pays you once a month if you do get VA benefits, and then there's that 60 to 90 day um, time frame where they're transitioning to pay you after you
Mm-hmm.
get your percentage. Um, you got to have some money set aside to soften that blow, so you're not worried. Can you pay your rent? Can you pay your electric, whatever? More your car payment, get gas to even go find a job. All the little stuff, because it's all ankle biter stuff when it comes down to money. When you're nickel and diamond everything, and that's the other thing. It's just don't go all outlandish. Understand that what is your left and right limit. You know, how much can you shrink out of your day-to-day habits,
Mm-hmm.
and not buy Starbucks coffee or whatever it is that you do. You'll have to find the little things to help keep the $2 to $5 into your pocket that you don't really need to spend.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest hurdle that most people will have, is just have that nest egg that you can rely on to help you out. And second thing would be, pay attention to people who've already gone through the process. Find out what
That's why
they,
you're here, Jeff.
huh?
I
Yeah.
said that's why
But
you're here, Jeff, to tell the
yeah.
people.
But even the guys that are going through it, because you're going through it, but find the guys that have either just went through the little class or they're in the class, and you're like, what would you want me to pay more attention to or write notes on better, because help. What would you found better to help you out? I mean, because while you're in, you can still go back to those classes and retake them, but at the same time, and they give you that handy dandy little notebook, you can refresh yourself on. But it's the little nuances that they talk about in class that you get straight out of the horse's mouth from the instructor, that you got to pay attention to. That's not in the book. Because yeah, I mean, because once you're out here on your own, and you gotta pay attention to every little thing, because the slightest little thing can make the right turn or the left turn, better for you. So it's the little things that'll come around, and yeah.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that, especially since, with the way things were from my situation, I didn't have a emergency fund, which I really needed on more occasions than I would like to admit. As you mentioned, like my transition leave was coming up. And so therefore my paychecks that I was getting from the Army were about to dry up. And I didn't have VA backstop. The only thing that was helping me at that point was I happened to get a stipend because I was a reduction in force type of exit. So there was that little help. You just never know when something's going to happen.
A flat tire, whatever.
Exactly. Flat tire, a pandemic. You never know when things are going to happen. And the last question that I've got for you, and then we'll let you get going and eat dinner, is what's something that you picked up during your entire 23 years in the military that you still do to this day or still can't get rid of?
Well, it's not the little nuances like you were talking about with the bootlaces and all that stuff. It's I just can't deal with stupid. I can't.
We didn't have stupid in the Army.
And and my bosses know it. If they ask my opinion, they're going to get the brutal truth. So they have to weigh their pros and cons when they ask me my opinion, and they know what they're going to get. Blunt truth, and they may not like it.
There you go.
But they're going to get it.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your honesty. Your brutal honesty.
Yeah, I mean, because that is the one thing I can let go of the guys that keep wearing the iPro and they're wearing their boonie hats, or they got to show that they were in the military by wearing their company T-shirts everywhere and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I got none of that.
There you go. I think I just outgrew mine.
I mean, I have them because Amy won't let me throw them away.
Ironically, because you both work for Goodwill, that you're not going to donate any of your unit T-shirts.
Yeah, I can get rid of all the clothes that the kids outgrow, but I can't get rid of those.
There you go. Everyone, take a moment, like, share, comment, subscribe. Reach out to your other friends. We're gonna enjoy the rest of tonight with Jeff's awesome beard. So
it's the only thing I can grow. I can't grow it up here.
There you go. And later, lads.